Hello and welcome back to the Battle Room. I'm, of course, the Battle Room, and today I'm joined by a bunch of teams. So EUIC is this week, so I wanted to do a little bit of a snapshot and meta breakdown of 5 teams that I think are the most important to beat or to use going into EUIC. EUIC is a huge tournament. It was very important for the season, it's very important for points, for money, all of that important stuff. But I wanted to just talk about these teams that I think are really, really strong and they're just going to warp the meta going into it. Whether you're a competitor, whether you're a casual viewer, or if you're someone going to a future event, I don't think that these teams are going anywhere. And I think they're 5 teams that you need to know how to use, beat, whatever. So first things first, let's start with the Marco team. The 5th team here was kind of hard for me to pick when looking through all the different teams. This was the team that I settled on because I've just played it so much on the ladder. And there was actually a Japanese tournament that took place last weekend in Regulation F, and this team actually won that tournament. So I think that we might be, I don't think we're sleeping on it per se, but I do think it's very, very well made, and it might be one of the best teams in the tournament, right? And Marco is one of the best players in the world. Dill is an exceptional player as well, and who knows, maybe they'll modify it, maybe they'll run it back. I think it's a great team going into this tournament. Let's break it down. Let's talk about why it is so good. So what I think that makes this team so cool is that it kind of has elements of hard Trick Room. We have Farigiraf Incineroar, which is like the best Trick Room setup you can get, I think. Like, outside of leading into like Golden Go plus Fluttermane or something ridiculous, or like I guess like a Terra Ghost Pokemon and a Ghost type, that's like the only way you're really able to stop these guys. And even then, you can just protect Farigiraf and you turn out into Ogerpon or knock off, do some damage, maybe even get a KO, maybe eat and make it rain so Farigiraf can live it next turn. It's just a guaranteed Trick Room. And now if this Trick Room is guaranteed, this one is even more guaranteed. You can just lead Ogerpon plus Farigiraf, follow me Trick Room. There's literally nothing they can stop you with, right? They would have to, again, hit you with like a Make It Rain plus a Specs Dazzling Gleam or something crazy. But even then, we have a Citrus Berry. This Farigiraf is bulky. It might just live. So I think it's all but a guaranteed Trick Room. And I think Regulation F is actually incredibly weak to Trick Room. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But I think Regulation F in general, most of the Pokemon do not like Trick Room. And I think Farigiraf is one of the best partners at enabling that. Because obviously, if we think about like Ursaluna Porygon, you can get Intimidate cycled, you can get Fake Out spammed, it can be really annoying. But with this team, that just doesn't happen. Because we have Farigiraf, we're able to stop those priority moves, we're able to set up Trick Room all but guaranteed, and we're able to sweep with either our Ursaluna or our Torkoal. So I think the Trick Room mode, very potent, very good, but that's not where the team ends, right? We also have a Specs Fluttermane paired with a Helping Hand Torkoal. The damage this thing can output is actually game-breaking. Like Terra Fairy Moonblast with Helping Hand is probably like the strongest move you'll ever get hit by. It literally one-shots things through resist. It's absurd. Like whenever I'm playing against it, I always underestimate how strong this Pokemon can be when it has all those pieces in play. So I think this combo is deadly, something you have to prepare for. But again, you also have to prepare for this Fake Out Trick Room mode, and also Instant Fluttermane, Instant Ogerpon is also really good. And I think Ogerpon is truly the piece that just brings this team all together and makes it easily one of the best teams in the format. I think Ogerpon is able to enable both the Specs Fluttermane and the Trick Room mode so perfectly that it is just it's so obnoxious, and the team is just so sauced and so good. It's something that I tested a little bit prior to attending EUIC, and I think this team is just exceptional. I totally think that there's just kind of endless options for the pilot to do, whether that's focusing on Trick Room mode, whether it's kind of just playing a mid-range mode, right? Like Pokemon like Ursaluna and Torkoal are totally fine outside of Trick Room as well. So sometimes you don't even need to bring the Trick Room setter at all, and you can just rely on Ursaluna to just come in mid-game, be very bulky, get burned, and get going. I think this team is just incredible just because of all the tools you have at your disposal. You have endless amounts of damage, you have awesome utility in Trick Room and Fake Out, and you also have Follow Me. So it can be really overwhelming to deal with, and sometimes I lose to it, sometimes I don't. When I feel like I have a good matchup into it, sometimes a player just diffs me and beats me crazy style, and I just lose the game. And so I think it's just a really exceptional team that just doesn't have bad matchups. I'm sure there are some, but I do think overall, like, you can find sneaky little ways to get out, whether it's maybe even just pressing Trick Room on Fluttermane, or just kind of playing the team in a little bit of an unorthodox way that just makes your opponent pressure in ways that they weren't prepared for, and you just win. I think this team is just incredible, and it is definitely one to watch out for going into EUIC. I didn't want to include this on the list. I really didn't want to include this one, but I think the amount of Dozo I've played on ladder is absurd. And I think the Dozo players are getting more and more creative, and I think this just really, really stemmed from the Birmingham regionals that just occurred. So at the regionals, this team finished second place by none other than Marcus Coe, Calculus over here. And this team has just been popping up all over ladder, but I don't think that it's like a fluke or that it's just them copying it. I think it's genuinely really, really strong. One of the things that Marcus did a lot that I think really like, I don't understand why he did this, but he started leading Dondozo plus Chiyu. Like in the finals and throughout the tournament, he was leading this a ton, right? From what I noticed on the stream games. And I started playing on ladder and they would do the same thing to me. And for some reason, it's just incredibly sauced. They almost always merge turn one, right? At like 99% of the time. But the fear I have in me to not try to, like put pressure on Chiyu or waste a turn going into that slot, it feels terrible. And I think that the lead is so diabolical and so good. Even if you know they're going to switch, there's a chance they don't, right? And so for some reason, I think it just unlocked Dozo players. And I see these Dozo players doing incredibly well on ladder, usually with the core three. I think, obviously, Dondozo, Tatsugiri, Chiyu, and Dragonite. I think those Pokemon are kind of non-negotiables in a way. I think they're usually on the teams. Usually Fluttermane's there as well. I did see a Tornadus version as well instead of Weezing. I think there's a lot of options that they can go, and I think it can get really creative. And I kind of have a feeling that going into UIC, we're going to see Dozo do well. I don't know if it's going to win. I don't think it's going to win, but I think in the tournament, it's going to place pretty highly, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was maybe one. I'm not going to say there's going to be two in cut, but I do think there's a really good chance we're going to see one Dozo in cut. The European Dozo players are incredibly good. We saw it obviously get second at Birmingham. It almost won. So I do fear Dozo going to this tournament, and I think you need to have some sort of plan. And I think the beauty of it really just stems from the Rocky Helmet adaptation as well has pushed Dozo to new heights, because I think prior to the Rocky Helmet, like Dozo would run leftovers. That makes a ton of sense, right? But Rocky Helmet is just so important for Pokemon like Urshifu. And I think the way the teams played too, right? Like turn one, they lead Chiyu Dozo, and turn one, they just switch into Tatsugiri. The reason it's not bad is because Dozo just absorbs so much HP from your team, right? Like it's so difficult to get around Wave Crash, to get around Order Up. I think it's not even about setting up win cons with Dozo, but about Dozo softening you up so that Chiyu and Fluttermane or Chiyu and Dragonite can come in late in the game and smack you around, and there's nothing you can do, right? Like a Banded Dragonite is hard to KO. A Focus Sash Chiyu is also incredibly difficult to KO. So I think this Rocky Helmet adaptation has just pushed Dozo to another level. And I really do respect Dozo, and I think Dozo is a good archetype and a good pick going into EUIC. I think it's going to get top 8 minimum. I'm very confident that this team is good. And the amount of people I see on ladder playing it is pretty high. I know the Dozo stands exist, and I know they like to spam the ladder, but I do think that they are, building slight alterations, testing different Pokemon over Weezing, and I do expect Dozo to perform incredibly, incredibly well. And I think this is just like a really good version of the team that Calic VGC was able to make going into Birmingham. And I think that second place was no fluke at all, and I think they had a really good meta call. So I think Dozo is something to be feared. I think the adaptations to Rocky Helmet, and this crazy Dondozo Chiyu lead, like genuinely, it blows my mind how strong it is. And like I know what they're doing every time, but it just works. I still lose games to it. And so I'm very curious to see, maybe my team I'm bringing to EUIC just sucks into Dondozo. I don't think it does personally, but I think that this team is just really, really concrete, really strong. And even if the matchup's bad, they can force awkward 50-50s that can just kind of like mess with you, and it can be really difficult for you as the player to call. So next up here, we have Psyspam. I think Psyspam popped off really, really hard in the last Victory Road, and I feel like it'd be disingenuous to not talk about Psyspam going into this tournament, because I think Psyspam is starting to rise up, and the team itself has not changed whatsoever throughout Regulation F. This was the team that was being used on day one. This was the best version of the team. in the last RegF, and now we move into this one. It's still, I think, the best version of the team. I think there's some other different routes you can go. We've seen a little bit of Calm Mind Iron Crown as well, mostly I saw it by Fede Campo. But I do think Calm Mind has a place, but I think it kind of falls under a similar umbrella here. The main idea, of course, is that Indeedee plus Iron Crown is very, very obnoxious to deal with, right? Like, it's so, you have to respect it so hard. If you don't have a Rillaboom, you better have a plan, dude, because these guys are hitting hard and they're hitting fast. And I think what's brutal about it too is, like, naturally the thing you want to use to beat Iron Crown plus Indeedee is something like, I don't know, Incineroar, right? But they've teched for that. They have Terra Blast, Water, Iron Crown, Helping Hand, one-shots, even potentially AAV ones if you don't run a lot of investment. So I think that this combo is just deadly. It doesn't necessarily have a lot of, like, really concrete answers. I think it's usually pretty trade heavy, and you just need to get the reads right, get the turns right, and slow them down. And I think Incineroar does help, but they do have the ability to one-shot you, right? I think the other really annoying part is Regidrago. I think Regidrago is very, very good into balance stuff. It forces a lot of Terras. It can be really, really awkward. And of course, you pair that with Indeedee, it can't be faked out. It can do a ton of damage. And then you also have the Dragon Steel. Like, you can force Terras with Regidrago, and then you can punish it with a Tachyon Cutter. I think naturally these Pokemon have amazing synergy. It's kind of like Golden Go Regidrago, right? Where they're really obnoxious together because normally the way you stop Regidrago is to Terra Fairy. But you can't do that when there's a Steel type that's hitting you for a ton of damage. So I think the synergy there is really, really smart, very obvious, very good. And then you also, not only that, but you do have to deal with Tornadus. I think Tornadus is really annoying, and just having like Tailwind Dragon Energy, Tailwind Expanding Force is just so brutal, right? And this team is so like flexible as well, right? Like, you can lead the Size Spam guys, for sure. You can also lead Tornadus Regidrago, set up Tailwind, and then switch in Indeedee, right? Like, you can just protect, set up Indeedee, right? And then this Focus Sash makes this guy really, really difficult to KO. The speed control's right there. And then also, obviously, Trick Room could be an option into something like this. But at the same time, the Regidrago and Indeedee do smack around the common Trick Room setters. Such as, you know, the Fergraph we saw on Marco's team, or Porygon 2 will also feint to a Helping Hand Dragon Energy, right? And then also, if it doesn't feint, you can just reverse Trick Room with Indeedee. So even that type of matchup can get really 50-50. I think another thing too is, like, the team itself is just so slippery and so, like, fishy in terms of, like, you can just force 50-50s. You can just make it awkward, right? Like, turn one, you can just go for the Helping Hand Expanding Force, calling their Terra Grass or whatever on their Incineroar, right? Or you could just smack them with the Terra Water. It's really, really difficult and very, very hard to get around, right? And I also think this is one of the only teams that can use Scarf or Shifu right now. We're not seeing it too much, but I think Scarf or Shifu is deadly. It's so good. It messes with a lot of people's plans into certain teams. Scarf or Shifu is just something that's not as prepared for as it once was, because we're seeing a ton of the Mystic Water set. Hell, even a little bit of Sash, but Scarf is just kind of thrown to the wayside. But Indeedee allows you to run that because now you're immune to the priority moves. You're immune to Grassy Glide. You're immune to Thunderclap, right? It makes it much, much easier to pilot Scarf or Shifu, and then you also have that Rain Dance to enable him. So I think this is just such an incredibly well-made team, and I just don't think there's notes to improve it. I think that these 6 Pokemon are really, really strong together. They're very cohesive. I didn't even talk about Ogerpon, but again, he is really, really strong. She does a ton of damage. You have another Follow Me user, right? So, like, you can just lead these guys, spam Expanding Force, you kill Indeedee, this guy comes in, and now you're dealing with another Follow Me user. It's just really, really difficult to get at the crown. And so I think it's just an incredibly well-built offensive team that, like, when the pilot is playing well, there's nothing you can do. Like, genuinely, there's nothing you can do, and this team is just so difficult to beat. Next up, we have to talk about my GOAT, Ursaluna. I love and adore Ursaluna. I've spent a lot of time with both of these teams, so I feel very well educated on how to play these teams, what they're strong into, and what they're weak to, right? And I think Ursaluna is an incredible, incredible spot right now. I think both these teams, I'm kind of putting them together because, like, in reality, it's the same team. There's just a Fluttermane or a Tornadus. They function very, very differently. Don't get me wrong. They're completely different teams, even though it's a one Pokemon shift. But I think that they go together, right? I think that the core of P2 Instant Ursaluna Amoonguss is just so strong. Again, I mentioned earlier that Trick Room is very, very strong, very, very potent in this format. It's very difficult to deal with. And I think that P2 Ursaluna is absurd. It's really difficult to deal with Ursaluna. If you get the Trick Room, you get the U-turn, boom, the game can kind of end sometimes. Obviously, players are good and they can play around it, and it's not that easy. But I think, like, you know, you dance around for a couple turns, you set up Trick Room with P2, and you get this guy in burned. There's not much they can do. It's very, very difficult to deal with, right? Usually you're going to have to get some big reads right. You're going to have to call some facades. You're going to have to switch you in Rillaboom at the right time. But they're really, really potent, and they're really, really strong. Like, this Pokemon is absurd, and we've seen a ton of it. Mostly with the Tornadus team. I think this team is definitely way more popular. A Japanese player actually used this in one of the Victory Roads, and it didn't really pop off necessarily hugely at Toronto. But then it just started picking up more and more usage. We saw it at Victory Road. We saw it do pretty well at Birmingham, but we saw it win Victory Road with Zine piloting it. And I just think it's the team to... There's two teams to beat, but this is definitely one of them. I think going into the tournament, if you have a bad matchup into this one, you're kind of trolling. I think this team is the team to beat. And this one's kind of a little bit of an offshoot of that. We'll talk about the Tornadus version first, why it's so popular and why it's so good. A Tail Room is a tale as old as time. Having Tailwind and Trick Room on the same team is absurdly broken. It's very difficult in Team Preview to deal with, because normally your answers for Porygon 2 are very different than your answers for Tornadus, right? Like, just for example, I think Amoonguss is very, very good into Porygon 2 and these kind of guys, but Amoonguss sucks into Tornadus. He hates him, dude. This guy just hits him with Bleak Wind Storms. I think also Tornadus is very strong in the meta right now. I think this what is this called? Sharp Beak. The Sharp Beak Tornadus is very, very good. There's a lot of grass types. There's a lot of Ogerpon, a lot of Rillaboom, a lot of Amoonguss, and being able to hit them for this insane damage is really, really nice. You can force some Terras. Pokemon like Urshifu and Ursaluna can capitalize on those, and you can just kind of get going. So Tornadus is very well positioned. I also think the way the speeds are in this format, right? Ursaluna is actually just fast enough to abuse Tailwind. You have to run a lot of speed, usually around, like, you need to hit about, like, anywhere from, I think it's like 91 and up, so you can outspeed Ogerpon. Usually they sit around like 94. I've seen a lot of the Ursalunas chilling in that range. So I think that but at 94, you do outspeed almost everything outside of like Chimpao Flutter and stuff like that. So if you're able to set up Tailwind, Ursaluna can now go crazy, right? But let's say, oh, you're like, Colin, I'll set up Tailwind too, and then Ursaluna's not fast. Well, viewer, if you play into an enemy Tailwind, you can just set up Trick Room, dude. You can just set up Trick Room. And then once Trick Room's set up, Ursaluna is now the fastest once again. And that's the beauty of it, right? You have to kind of call which support Pokemon they're going to bring, and you have to act accordingly. And then Incineroar, he's the greatest Pokemon of all time. He is amazing with both Trick Room, with Porygon to help set it up, and he's amazing with Tailwind plus Urshifu. He's a god. Amoonguss, again, is also a little worse than Tailwind, but he's still very supportive. He can help enable both Ursaluna and Urshifu. You just Rage Powder. Then your big bears can do some damage and you're going nuts, right? Even a Tornadus, he does some big damage. And I think that's another thing that makes the team so good, is both P2 and Tornadus do a lot of damage as support Pokemon, so you never feel like you're lacking in that way. And then obviously you have the classic Rain Dance, Surging Strikes. There's nothing you can do. That is goated. But I think like the main weakness of this version of the team, in my opinion, is actually going to be Raging Bolt. I think Raging Bolt can get a little bit slippery. He can get a little bit difficult. I think you have to rely a lot on Amoonguss, obviously Ursaluna, because again, if you don't bring Ursaluna to the matchup, Raging Bolt farms all 5 of these Pokemon. Calm Mind Raging Bolt just goes absolutely nuts. I think it's definitely like super doable for the Ursaluna player, but that is something that I find a little bit annoying about this team, is that Raging Bolt can get a little bit out of hand, and it is very, very telegraphed sometimes. Obviously, you don't have to bring Ursaluna, but if you don't bring it and they bring Raging Bolt, it can get really bad really fast. So I think having the telegraphed Ursaluna can be a little bit of a downside of this team. But again, like, I think that's a total fine weakness to the team that is a little bit Ursaluna reliant. I think the team itself is really, really potent and very, very strong. And now the other version of the team is very similar. But what I think is kind of cool about this version is that, again, it's literally like all the sets are almost the exact same. I guess one thing I should note is that this Amoonguss, I would say, usually runs Citrus Berry on this set. We did see it run Mental Herb at a certain point, and now Rocky Helmet is also an option. It kind of really depends on the player and what they think is best going into this format. But Amoonguss's item can change. Everything else is kind of locked in, set in stone. But this version of the team is really interesting because adding Fluttermane helps a lot with Raging Bolt. I'm actually under the firm belief that Incinemungus and Urshifu and Fluttermane are pretty good in the Raging Bolt balance stuff. I think it's got a lot of options. I think Fluttermane is really good into that team. But I think what this version of the team suffers with is actually enemy Amoonguss. I think Amoonguss can cause a lot of problems, whether it's with just the enemy Amoonguss rage powdering all your damage, your Urshifu, even your Fluttermane because you have no spread move. It does kind of suck. And so I think Amoonguss can be a little bit annoying. But again, you have Substitute on this guy. You have Terra Grass. You can totally make it work. But I think Amoonguss players have gotten better and better, and I think it can be kind of obnoxious. But I do think this team is really cool as well. And one big advantage here is that Ursaluna doesn't need to run any speed. So if you do manage to set up Trick Room, you can make those mirrors really in your favor. Because again, you can kind of run... I think they usually sit at Adamant, no investment, 31 IV is where I personally feel that's when I play this team. I put Ursaluna at that speed stat. I don't want to go min speed. I don't think it's super worth it. You totally can. Because if you're at 0 Adamant, you're underspeeding all the Ursalunas anyways. And I think that's what makes it kind of interesting though. It's like, in the mirror, when these two teams play, it's very much about Incinemungus, like, slowing down the enemy, being obnoxious, whether it's with knockoff, whether it's Spore, to not allow this Ursaluna to come in safely. And then sometimes... as well, you can run into the problem of just like the Urshifu can be an issue as well, right? Like it's very interesting. Yeah, because like you can't really set up Trick Room in the mirror. You can set up Tailwind for sure, but I think sometimes he can be deadweight as well. He can get spored, he can get faked out, like he can get cycled on pretty easily. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. I feel like when the mirror is played, it's usually going to be these four from both sides, so it makes it kind of interesting. But yeah, I think both these versions are very, very potent, very, very good in the current format. And I kind of want to say, I don't think they'll win the tournament. I think whatever wins EUIC is not necessarily going to be one of these teams. It might be very close, it might be a variant of it, but I just don't think that either of these 6 have it in them to win the tournament. Obviously, this is the team that won the tournament at EUIC 2 years prior, but I just don't think they got the sauce. I think players will be ready for them, but at the same time, again, it kind of gives the player, all these teams give the player so many tools to be a better player. So I'm not sure. I definitely expect this team to do well. I think we'll see a bunch of them in top cut. Maybe not a bunch, but a couple. We'll see a bunch in day 2 for sure. So I think this is a team you have to know how to beat. And I'm very curious to see how it's going to perform at the tournament. I love Ursaluna. I played basically the same team. I had Golden Go Kilowattrel in Regulation H. I just came off that regulation, so obviously these teams appeal to me a ton. This team is like one of my favorites to play in the format. So I'm a little bit, like I have a lot of experience with it, but at the same time, I do think that it might be too prepped against. But at the same time, again, you can't fully prep against something like this because the tools are just absurd. And finally, we have to talk about Raging Bolt balance. This is just the best team in the game. I would say there's two versions right now. There's Chien-Pao and Ogerpon. We'll talk about Chien-Pao first because I think this is the better one, and this is the version that I think a lot of players are going to gravitate towards. So this was the team that actually won Victory Road this past weekend by Zine. Funnily enough, Zine won with the Tornadus Bear team and then followed it up with a win with this team. And I think that they truly are. Like, I think Zine's a perfect example of this. He's an amazing player. He knows how to play the game incredibly well. You give him a team with the best tools, he's going to win the tournament, right? So this team has the best tools, though. It's just the tale as old as time. Everyone knows about this team, right? You have Raging Bolt. He's the star. He's the guy we talk about. Funnily enough, the Booster Bolt is probably the more popular one at this point instead of the Leftovers. It just gives you a lot of damage. You usually only need like one Calm Mind, and then he's one-shotting everything, right? He's amazing. He's awesome. And you're like, okay, how's he getting the Calm Mind? Well, that's easy. That's the easy part. You have Incineroar, and you've got Rillaboom. I think the taunt on Incineroar is just so juicy as well. I think it enables the Raging Bolt, because a lot of the things that Raging Bolt hates the most are Pokemon like Amoonguss. He hates Amoonguss, he hates Trick Room, he hates Speed Control. And I think Taunt is just so good at just stalling those, preventing those, right? Amoonguss, no Spores. Porygon 2, no Trick Rooms, right? So I think Incineroar enabling that, right? And he can also just intimidate, and he fakes out. He makes this Raging Bolt near unkillable. And then you have this Rillaboom who's giving the pseudo leftovers. He's giving Raging Bolt a grassy terrain. This is just a god combo, right? All three of these Pokemon are absurd. But then you throw in the Goat or Shifu, and now you have fake out Surging Strikes. You have U-Turn. U-turn also came back in usage, which is kind of interesting because high horsepower is very popular to combat Raging Bolt, but now U-turn's back, so you can U-turn, you can parting shot, you can cycle those intimidates, cycle those fake outs, and let Urshifu be broken. Because fake out Surging Strikes is the best strategy in the game. Like straight up, this is the best way to play Pokemon. It's so hard to deal with. I think what makes it so broken is it's just zero risk, right? Like, because normally fake out Surging Strikes, the way you'd stop that is just protecting. But again, Unseen Fist stops that. So you're able to just strike through protect. And I think it just makes it so potent, so powerful. They have to switch or they have to take the hit. And I think that's a great potent strategy. And that's one of the best strategies. But then we also have Surging Strikes plus Sword of Ruin, which is really broken. Chien-Pao lowers everyone's defense, obviously. And he comes in there and he lets Urshifu go nuts, right? But then this is where the sauce came in. So this was ran at Birmingham as well by Stefano here. It actually won the entire tournament, and what makes it so good is the Icy Wind tech. Icy Wind just makes Urshifu even more absurd. Not only do you have to deal with Sword of Ruin, not only do you have to deal with Fake Out plus Intimidate plus Grassy Terrain, you also have to deal with Icy Wind. So now, effectively, Urshifu's moving as fast as Chien-Pao because Icy Wind is slowing them down. So now Urshifu's just smacking you through Protect, and he's faster than you. And he gets Mystic Water, and he gets a Defensive Terra. It's just the best Urshifu team in the game. It's the best Raging Bolt team in the game. It's exceptional. And I think it has its problems. I think that you can break through this team. I think if the pilot isn't performing well, obviously, like, you can pick apart this team. But I'm very curious to see what really can stop it. Because in my mind, there's an interesting clash between Tornadus and this team. But I personally favored this team. But I think both teams can win. I think that the Amoonguss version can totally break through. But I think you have to rely on Trick Room a little bit. And it can get a little bit dicey. You got to rely on Ursaluna. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting matchup. I expect to see it at the tournament. We might see it on stream. I do think other people will pull some creative teams. I just kind of picked the most popular and most potent teams to talk about because I think these will make a splash at the tournament, and I think they influence the meta going forward. I do think that some people will come up with some creative teams that do well into these type of teams, but I also think that players like Zine, players like Stefano, players like Sanvi will show up with this team to the tournament, and they will win a lot of games of Pokemon. And this is a team that you have to respect. And then Landorus here is just like, I kind of feel like he just brings everything together. He helps with all the Pokemon that are annoying, right? He's good into Amoonguss with Substitute. He's good into Incineroar, right? Like, he just kind of shuts it down. And I think he's very good with this Icy Wind POW as well. He also helps in the mirror against Raging Bolt. I don't want to say that this team is, like, unbeatable or that it's guaranteed to win, because I don't think it is. I think that players can find their matchup. They can have a good matchup into it. They can figure out their lines pretty well. But at the same time, like, this player, whoever uses this team, the player who uses this team has so many tools. You have all the fake out. You have the speed control. You have this checkmate Pokemon that can go absurd and just kind of breaks the speed game because he has Thunderclap. So he's just a priority, right? You have Prio Spam. You have Urshifu plus fake out. And then you have this amazing Landorus Pokemon who's like the best ground type in the game and the only Pokemon that can beat Raging Bolt paired next to two fake out users of Substitute. I think that Stefano absolutely cooked with this team, and I think that this team is the best team in the game. I'm not going to say it's guaranteed. It's not guaranteed to win at all, but I think it is very potent. And then another version that's actually popped up as well is just the Ogerpon over Chien-Pao. This was the team that got second in the most recent Victory Road tournament. I think this is kind of a cool version with the Sash Urshifu. But I think Ogerpon is also still just a good Pokemon. He kind of gives you more of a priority spam team here. But I think that, again, this Chien-Pao version is the one to watch for. I think everything is enabling everything here. You have the perfect blend of physical and special, right? Like, you have the most insane special attackers paired with the most insane physical attackers. Chien-Pao is just helping everybody. And this Icy Wind move just really breaks him open. We saw it actually last year at Worlds do incredibly well with Montana Mont. He was able to get top 4 at Worlds with Icy Wind POW. Icy Wind POW was just exceptional at that tournament. And it's kind of exceptional right now. So I don't know. I'm very curious to see. And let me know what you think down below. Like, do you think this team can be stopped? Is the format solved? Is a question I think everyone's asking. Because I think it's going to be very interesting to see where Regulation F goes after this. Because I do think all of these teams are very good. And I'm sure that in a week's time after EUIC, there will be other teams to discuss. But I do think right now, looking at this tournament, I would predict this team to win the entire thing. So Let me know what you guys think down below. And thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.